Let's keep matters political, but moving over to ActionSA now, which is calling on Agriculture Minister Thoko Didiza to revoke the 21-day ban on the movement of cattle. Now, the aim of the ban is to curb the spread of foot and mouth disease, but the party says the livelihoods of farmers and farm workers will be destroyed. To discuss this, we are joined by ActionSA's Eastern Cape chairperson, Mr. Athol Trollip. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Mr. Trollip. You're calling for the ban to be lifted, but it's been indicated by the department that it's been done to curb the spread of the foot and mouth disease. Isn't that something you would want as well?
Good afternoon. Absolutely. Foot and mouth disease has been around for millennia on the African continent. It's endemic to certain areas. And in South Africa, there is a red line above which foot and mouth is endemic and occurs regularly. It is a notifiable disease because it's a economically debilitating disease, and also it compromises all biosecurity in the agricultural environment. So we want to see it eradicated. In fact, we're so desperate to see it eradicated that we believe that there are much more effective ways to eradicate it than those that have been implemented at the moment. I mean, for example, for more than a year, we have not been able to export any of our natural fibers, wool and mohair, to China, which consumes up to 70% of that product. And that obviously has tremendous economic impact on the farming community. And one would think that much more important and drastic actions would have been taken before this draconian ban on transport of livestock, especially cattle, for 21 days. My big question is, what will happen after 21 days? And the answer to that is foot and mouth will still be around. It's not going to go away after a 21-day ban. And I believe that the effective way to combat this would be to ensure that all stakeholders are included in a very specific disaster management team, including all state resources, all state departments involved in agriculture, also the state veterinary services that have been denuded to such an extent that it's hardly effective at all. So we believe you should include private veterinary services, the red meat industry, the RPO, the agricultural unions, farmers associations, and farmers themselves to identify where these cases are occurring, to isolate those cases, to treat the animals, and to euthanize the animals if necessary. To simply slap a blanket ban across all provinces. Some of the provinces in this country haven't had an outbreak for many, many years, but they are now have to deal with this 21-day ban, which is going to have consequences. It'll increase the price of meat. There will be a scarcity of meat. And yes, there is a provision to make allowances for transport of animals to abattoirs, but also for ritual slaughter. But the big thing is that animals can move themselves. Animals are mobile. They walk across farm boundaries. They walk all over cities. They cross provincial boundaries without being transported. And these are the things that need to be focused on. And I think a blanket ban is tantamount to what the previous regime under apartheid would do. Whenever they were facing an insurmountable issue, they would place a blanket ban on any kind of activity that they didn't like. The one thing we can't do is we can't force livestock and cattle especially to wear masks for 2 years like we were expected to do during the COVID pandemic. And I think we need to be a lot more creative and a lot more inclusive to find solutions to this massive economic challenge and biosecurity challenge in South Africa.
And you do say that one of those ways would be the collaboration with different stakeholders that you listed just a few moments ago. I mean, you say that one of the threats that exist is the prices of meat being inflated because of this issue, but broader economic implications that we would see here, Mr. Trollip. We do know that there's also auctions, livestock auctions and breeding that happen, and those also really contribute to our economic performance or the running of our economy. So maybe just a broad sense of the economic implications that we could potentially see here.
Well, I think that's a very good point that you make. First of all, livestock auctions and stud stock auctions take place every day across this country. And they don't only occur on the day that the auction actually takes place. You've got to move livestock there before. So you'll have livestock standing in auction pens 48 hours. They could easily be standing there within the period that has been granted before the blanket ban comes into effect. And then the question would be, what would happen to the well-being of those animals after the prohibition of transport? They would stand in crawls, who would feed them, who would water them, and their welfare and well-being is very important. But the consequences are that if there is no transportation of livestock allowed in this country, especially cattle, across the country for 21 days, there will be a shortage. The price of beef will soar, but also the economic knock-on effect for farmers who have planned for this income, who budget for this income, who are waiting for bank loans, honoring bank commitments, trying to pay their staff. It's a massive knock-on effect. And then, of course, is the question of, are we capable to police such a blanket ban? And the answer has to be, we're not capable. We're not capable in this country of controlling escalating violent crime. We can't patrol communities that are beset with gangsterism. And now we're going to deploy police services and maybe even the army to go and have checkpoints across the country and distract them from dealing with the very real challenges that affect day-to-day life in South Africa, and that is criminality that our police services and our defense force cannot contain in South Africa. So I just don't believe that it's implementable. I don't think it's feasible, and I don't think it's been properly thought through.
So you've obviously been engaging with those involved in the industry that has been impacted by the ban. Have you then gone on to approach the department and try and have meaningful discussions and put these ideas in front of the minister? And has she responded favourably if you've done that?
Look, you're right. I've been engaging with many of the stakeholder organizations who have raised concerns with ActionSA. And I am a bit confused that some of the stakeholders are speaking out of different sides of their mouth, which makes it very difficult for the minister to take advice from an industry that should be speaking with one voice about how to contain this disease. And that has been a concern. So we'll continue to engage those stakeholders and also the government to try and find a much more coherent way. You know, if you could start by identifying the areas where this disease is endemic, put in systems that are manageable and that we can control, and get state veterinary services dedicated to those areas so we can treat it. And then, you know, see if we can contain it in the areas where it is prevalent, and then you can prevent the spread. But if you just have a blanket ban, I don't think it's going to be effective. And also the question is, you know, foot and mouth didn't rear its ugly head yesterday or last week. It's been around for millennia in this country, and it has been controlled to a greater or lesser extent over that time by successful initiatives and less successful initiatives. The fact is that unless you have a proper reporting system where notifiable diseases occur, that people can quickly jump to action, isolate where they occur, treat them appropriately to prevent the spread, this disease will continue spreading. And I believe that the government is deficient in those facilities to act appropriately and effectively and swiftly to deal with any notifiable disease outbreak. You know, the COVID-19 experience in South Africa is a case in point. I believe that our economy was decimated. People lost their livelihoods. Some people lost their lives, very unfortunately. But I believe that the containment of that pandemic could have been done without the economic consequences. And I think the containment of foot and mouth can be done better without the knock-on effect of economic consequences that will have devastating effect for already a struggling sector, which is the agricultural sector. And what's more important about that is that without this, the agricultural sector being able to flourish and make profits in the rural hinterland of this country, the poor people who live in the rural hinterland are going to suffer even more. Agriculture is the backbone to the economic survival of the rural hinterland of South Africa.
Thank you very, very much for those insights. We've been speaking there to ActionSA's Athol Trollip about the 21-day ban on the movement of livestock to curb the spread of foot and mouth disease. They're saying it's not a viable or sustainable solution, and different stakeholders need to get involved to try and not get rid of it, but to control it in such a way where there's no outright ban.